Testing. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Uh-oh. All right, chat. Let's get started today. How y'all doing? Ugh. Is this weird? Okay. So welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG. This is blurry. It's blurry chat. No, there we go. Welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream chat. My name is Alok Kanoja. I'm a psychiatrist practicing in Boston, Massachusetts. Just a reminder that everything we discuss on stream today is intended to be for educational purposes only, and nothing is intended to be taken as medical advice. So just a reminder that if you have a question or concern, please go see a licensed professional. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So 1 second, I got to close the door. Hold on. GG, adios. Okay. How y'all doing today? So today, pretty excited. We actually have a lot of cool things, I think, planned for today. So we've got, by a lot of cool things, we've got, we're going to be doing like subreddit review and some questions. So I'm really excited actually about a lot of the topics we're going to be talking about today. A lot of like really important stuff, like kind of timely stuff, emerging stuff. Couple of things to just update you all about. So next week we're not going to have a regular stream schedule. I'm not sure exactly when we're going to stream. We may not do a standard HG stream, but I think we're going to be on the Austin show, or just chatting with Austin. So that'll probably be on Monday. And a couple of other things to keep in mind. So we're going to be opening up a lot of parent coaching spots on November 11th. So if y'all are interested, if you're parents out there that want to learn how to talk to your kids, or if you guys are, if you have parents, or you have, if you want your parents to sign up, and so that we can teach them how to talk to you and understand you, we're going to be launching that on November 11th. So here at HG, we believe in, supporting like everyone involved in sort of like problematic video game usage. And so a lot of what we've discovered is that the problems are not just with the kids, the problems are with the parents as well. And so they need some help and support, and they need to understand like what video games mean to their children. So a good example of this is that like, I don't think a lot of parents get that if you take away like video games, you take away a very important source of social support for your kids. And so I think we are trying to educate parents and sort of help them support their children to develop healthier video gaming habits. So we also may be doing a little bit of parent related stuff in the future. So I'm super excited about that. I know we get a lot of like, questions and stuff from people who have like parents who are toxic to them, or they believe they're toxic to them. So we have a lot of the gamer's perspective, and I think it's going to be really cool to try to get more of the parental perspective. So so hopefully we'll do some of that stuff. I see we have a hype train going, so thank you all very much for all the subs and donations and whatnot. Everything that we get from stream does go to fuel, our goals and objectives here at Healthy Gamer. So some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today, for example, we have a research wing, and we had a research project that sort of didn't pan out around pornography addiction, but I think it was still really useful because I understand pornography addiction better, and it'll help me sort of better answer questions. So we've got some questions about some stuff related to sex and pornography today. So thank you guys very much for the support. We try to do our best to, put those funds to things like pilots and stuff, and try to figure out how we can help the community. A big part of that is also like, for example, being able to experiment with parents and trying to figure out, okay, like, is this a conversation that we should have with just gamers, or should we be talking to the parents of gamers too? So thank you guys very much. We really appreciate it. Okay, so shall we get started, chat? All right, so the first one may get me the first thing that we're going to talk about kind of gets me riled up a little bit, okay? So prepare yourselves. So let's go ahead and experiment with parents. Yeah, dude. Okay. So hold on. Works now? Saved? 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 Okay. So let's start back from the top. So the first thing I want to talk about today is someone cross-posted this from the anti-work subreddit. And what they kind of posted is this tweet, which is a truly dystopian part of all of this, are the chipper email reminders from schools and workplaces reminding people to tend to their mental health while doing absolutely nothing to make that possible. So I think this tweet is actually like really important because it speaks to a fundamental problem. And I think one of the biggest scams that's currently being perpetrated against people about kind of burnout and mental wellness. So what I mean by that is like there's something going on right now, which is like very subtle and is actually like society wide. Oh, shit. What the? Which I think is a real problem. Okay. And the biggest problem right now that I think is happening with burnout is that people are placing the responsibility of burnout on the individual. So this is something that's like very subtle, but like, for example, the World Health Organization has recently, they like coined like this kind of diagnosis that's burnout. So a lot of people are sort of talking about burnout. And if you really think about it, there's a huge problem because burnout affects the individual. Right? So the way that we talk about this problem is very individual oriented. So we say that, all of these like issues of workplace mental health, like the mental health is like within the person. Burnout happens to a person. And so there's a subtle problem that's going on. There's a very subtle scam going on, which is that once you kind of label it as an individual problem, you say, oh, you're burnt out, like go get a diagnosis from a psychiatrist. And then you work on it as a person, as an individual. What's happening is there's a very subtle, drastic, and catastrophic shift of responsibility from the workplace to the individual. And I think this is incredibly damaging. So this has happened before. So if you look at addiction, this is another big area where like this kind of thing happened. So 40 years ago, if you were addicted to cigarettes, like what was the solution to you being addicted to cigarettes? It was a personal solution, right? It was like, go to a doctor, and then like doctors will prescribe medications to help you get off of cigarettes, like stuff like Chantix and things like that. It's like, here, use this Nicorette replacement gum, like use this gum. Like basically the problem of you being addicted to something is an individual problem. We also see this with opiate usage, right? Where like there's a diagnosis of opiate use disorder. So people get addicted to opiates. And then the burden of fixing that problem falls to the individual. I think the big catastrophic mistake that happened in all of these situations is that there was a very real ignorance or avoidance of a systemic responsibility. So we now know through like various investigations and like even lawsuits and stuff that like the opioid crisis in the United States is not there because of a failing of like millions of individuals to get off of opiates, right? The opioid crisis in this country was created by a systemic change where like doctors were overprescribing opiates by an industry that was sort of like saying, hey, this isn't a problem. This is really great. Everyone should use this. Okay. And so I think that what the same exact thing is actually happening with like workplace mental health and burnout. Where what's happening is we're saying like, oh, people are burnt out. So like companies are going to their HR departments and they're saying like, hey, employees are worrying about burnout. Like people are really concerned about it. Like, what should we do? And then the HR folks, like in a sense, they don't really know better, right? So they're doing is like, okay, so like, let's give people access to a meditation app. Let's send them daily email reminders to tell them to take care of their mental health. But if you look at all of those solutions, the burden of responsibility is being placed on the individual. And what's kind of interesting is by placing the burden of responsibility on the individual, the industry is sort of getting a pass. And this is a huge problem because the truth of burnout, and if you go back to the original like research on burnout, was done by someone named Maslow. And what Maslow basically determined, so like quick history lesson on burnout, is Maslach said, hey, there's this thing called burnout, and it like causes people to be not empathic. It causes people to lose motivation. It causes people to like, have difficulty like doing things. And so what the psychological and psychiatric community said when Maslach basically coined the term burnout and said, hey, there's this burnout syndrome, they said, well, how is this different from depression, right? Because in psychiatry, what we tend to do when someone says, hey, I've discovered a new thing, what the automatic response is like, how is this thing new? Like, because we know about depression. It sounds like what you're describing is depression. And what Maslach defined burnout as is he said, yeah, it's very similar, but there's a key difference. Burnout is caused by workplace stuff. So it's these symptoms that look like depression, but have a fundamental root in workplace related things and like workplace interactions. So even if you look at the World Health Organization definition of burnout, it relates to workplace-related stuff. And this is really, really important because there's a very subtle thing that happens here, which is that when we start diagnosing individuals with burnout, even if it's workplace-related stuff, we are still shifting the blame and the responsibility of burnout to the individual as opposed to the workplace. And this is something that like I've seen time and time and time again, where when I deal with burnout, and I've done a lot of work on burnout, what we tend to find is that like burnout is not caused, generally speaking, by individual factors. It's caused by workplace related factors. So I'm going to give you guys an example from medicine. So doctors tend to work really, really hard, right? So we tend to work hard. We like study hard, like we study for, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. In residency, we work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And the interesting thing is that most doctors are actually like okay with that. They're okay with doing that kind of work. If you ask doctors why they're burnt out, it's not actually working a lot. It's not the number of hours. It's the kind of work that they're forced to do. So I'll give you guys just an example. This is something that I find incredibly frustrating. So I can work with patients for 60 hours a day, but what I absolutely hate is arguing with insurance companies for 10 hours a day. So this is where, like, if I think my patient needs a particular medication, what I have to do is, like, I may prescribe it, but then, like, the insurance company says, we're sorry, we're not going to pay for that medication. We don't think your patient needs it. Instead, we're going to give them this other medication, and this is what we're willing to pay for. And so then what I have to do is spend, like, an hour calling the insurance company, and they do this on purpose, by the way. They don't make the process of getting expensive medication for their patients easy. They make it hard because they understand that for every hour, the harder they make it for me to get the medication for my patient, the less likely I am to actually like advocate for more expensive medication. So they place artificial barriers that are quite high, requiring me to fill out forms, spend time on the phone, talk to someone else, and justify my decision. And keep in mind, it's not like I'm justifying the decision to a medical doctor, right? It's like someone who's got like a business degree who's saying this is our protocol and this is what we're going to pay for. And so that's the kind of stuff that burns me out. So what we understand is that like burnout is not caused by an individual problem. It's not like the person is lazy or they're just not taking care of themselves. Burnout tends to be caused by people who want to do a good job, who are placed in situations where doing a good job is very, very difficult. And so what's happening right now is when people when workplaces will do stuff like, okay, like, hey, here's an email to kind of take care of yourself. Here's a subscription to a meditation app, and this is our solution, right? And so what the company then does is they like check the box. They're like, okay, this is our employee wellness initiative, and we've checked the box. And the cool thing about our employee wellness initiative is that we value wellness and we care about our employees. But don't ask us to actually change anything at work, because that's ridiculous. Like, it's silly, right? The solution to employee wellness is the burden is on the employees. Like, we're going to help you. We're going to be such good employers, and we're going to give you the subscription to this meditation app so that you can meditate in your free time, and that way you'll be less burnt out. Good job, right? Strong work. And the thing is, like, this is the huge problem, right? Because, like, now what we're having is a society that is assuming that wellness is a combination of, like, meditation apps, like chia seed pudding, and, like, home delivery food services that allow you to, like, cook stuff. The burden of wellness is being placed on the individual. And and the message that we get is it's like the workplace doesn't need to change anything. What needs to happen is like you need to eat more chia seed pudding, you need to like do yoga every day, and you need to meditate, and like that's the solution. Like it's your fault that you're burnt out because you're not taking care of your mental wellness well enough. It's not our fault as an industry. We're not contributing to this. It's like if you do these things, like this is the solution. And this is the biggest scam that's being perpetrated against us, right? Is like this idea that like burnout, which Maslach defined as a workplace-related thing, that the solution is on the side of the individual. And this sort of makes sense in terms of what's happening in the world, because I don't know if you guys get this, but like meditation apps are on the rise. Chia seed pudding is on the rise. Yoga is on the rise. All of these things are far more accessible than they've ever been. And you would think that if these things were actually effective, we would see a decrease in the level of burnout. But what we actually see is the opposite, that burnout is getting worse despite the wellness industry booming. So like, what's the problem here? The problem is that all of the solutions that we have to burnout are not actually targeting the root of the problem, which is a workplace-related thing. And so like, this is where, I know it sounds crazy, but like, this is a big part of how you successfully deal with burnout, is you have to target the workplace-related stuff. So a couple years ago, I was running this program called the SMART program, which so the SMART program is the Stress Management and Resilience Training Program. It's for physicians, and it's out of this place called the Benson Henry Institute at Harvard Medical School. So I was running this program for a couple of years. It was created by a predecessor of mine who was awesome and brilliant and very forward-thinking. And so what we did is we took 600 doctors a year and we put them through this resilience training program. And here's what we even did it for free. So here's what we found is that when we went to a hospital and we're like, hey, we have this program for you that will like help your staff, your doctors be like less burnt out. And the people would be like, oh, that's great. Like, can you do the program? We were like, yeah, we'll do the program. And then they're like, okay, what does it cost? And we're like, it doesn't cost anything. Well, we're happy to do it because we're just here to try to support like, resident physicians. And so they were all for it. And when did we get pushback? We got pushback when we said, hey, if you guys want to do this program, you have to make it a part of your resident physician's regular workday. So we're happy to do the program, but for 2 hours once a week, the people in the program need to be excused from work. Because what everyone wanted to do is like tack it on to the end, right? They're like, okay, you're gonna work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. because those are your regular work hours. And then we've got this 2-hour awesome wellness course at the end of the day that you guys can do. It's free. It's gonna be from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. where you can learn how to take better care of your mental health. Isn't that fantastic? Look at how much we're supporting resident wellness. And so we said that here's what we found. The core finding from the program is you have to make it a part of their job. You can't add it on. It can't be optional. It has to be replacing actual work. And so this was something that we got a lot of pushback on. But what we ultimately found is that like, it's kind of bizarre, but like when people replaced actual patient care or other kinds of documentation or things like that with this wellness program, it actually succeeded quite a bit. And I know it sounds kind of weird, but the basic thing that we discovered is that wellness is not something that has to be done by an employee outside of work hours. In order for like employee wellness to actually be effective, it's something that must be taken care of as part of their job. It's not something extra. It's not something additional. It's something that has to be systemically implemented into the job. And the SMART program isn't the only example of this. So like the bizarre thing is I've done this work with a lot of different companies now. So I've done it like at investment banks, private equity firms, tech companies. We do this kind of work with streamers and stuff like that. And what we've essentially discovered is that the industry accepting responsibility for improving the employee work conditions is the best solution to burnout. And a lot of people in the industry are very concerned about this, right? Because they're like, oh, like if my doctors are not seeing people for 2 hours a day, that means that we're going to make less money. And so like industries tend to be very resistant to it. And the thing is, they're dumb. Because the truth is that when you implement like wellness initiatives, which may not look like meditation, by the way, I'll give you guys a great example of this. It actually like tends to improve like employee happiness, and it actually makes you money. So I'm going to give you guys a great example of this. Once again, from medicine, okay? So one of the things that's the most annoying about being a doctor is that you have to write notes. And so like writing notes used to be good. Like it used to be like a useful thing that as a doctor, I want to remember things for myself, or I have colleagues who are going to like, be looking at my notes because they're taking care of a patient overnight. So the purpose of a note used to be to like transmit useful information from like one person to another person, or even from one, like to write it down so you can remind yourself the next day. Okay, so this person had a fever this day. I gave him this medication. It seemed to get better. Okay, good to know. So over time though, what's happened is notes have become like a tool for billing. So now like we all get oriented on, we go through these seminars where there's like some hospital administrator that says, if you add these 6 sentences to your note, we can bill at a higher level and the hospital will make more money. So now notes are becoming like a useless pile of garbage that's used for the sake of like billing insurance. And this is also, it's mind-numbingly boring as a physician because I have to write all this useless crap that has nothing to do with patient care so that I can bill at a higher rate and I can get bonus and the hospital can make more money. So when you talk to doctors about, what do they dislike about their job, what burns them out, and they'll say things like, it's like insurance and like note writing. So then some hospitals were actually really forward thinking and they're like, what we're going to do? We're going to hire a scribe. So they actually asked the doctors, they said like, what would be useful for you? And like the doctors are like, it would be great if I didn't have to write notes. So instead what the hospital actually did is they like some hospitals have done this and now it's becoming more commonplace. They actually hire a separate person who accompanies the doctor. And they have like a laptop. They have like a little laptop that they carry around. They carry a stool. Like some of them will literally carry a stool. So the doctor walks in and then there's like the patient sitting there. Doctor sits there. There's some rando there with a laptop and a stool. They unfold their stool. They sit down and they start typing as the doctor is talking. And what people have discovered is that like having this scribe, which may cost $20 an hour, it's a whole different person that you have to hire and train and stuff like that. So there's an upfront cost. It actually works wonders because what happens is that the doctor doesn't have to spend time writing notes anymore, right? So now this like you have this peon who's like doing all this like crappy note writing that allows you to bill at a higher rate. You pay $20 an hour more. And the cool wild thing is that not only is the doctor happier because they don't have to spend as much time writing stupid crap, they also can see more patients. So what you're actually allowing a doctor to do is operate at what's called the top of their license, which is like, instead of seeing 10 patients and writing notes for 1 hour, I can see 11 patients and write notes for like 10 minutes. And it's actually a win-win like all around. And this is what I've seen time and time and time again, is that employers and industries that sort of take the burnout of their employees seriously and are willing to actually implement systemic change from a workplace environment perspective are the ones that actually win, which is why it's so like bizarre to me that like people are so resistant to this, that it's kind of crazy that like in industries right now, like success around burnout is possible. You can actually support the health and well-being of your employees in the workplace. And like, even if it negatively impacts your bottom line, like you can absolutely do it. And I would bet money that even if you did that, even if you're seeing like some kind of upfront cost, over time, you'll see like more productivity. But it's bizarre to me that it's essentially what's going on in the world right now is that you have like industries and corporations that are outsourcing their the mental health of their employees. They're not like taking any responsibility for it. And they're sort of like going to HR and they're like, hey, our employees are complaining about burnout. Like, what should we do? Like, and then the HR person is like, the HR person can't say like, oh, we have to like, let them work from home. Like there's another good example where, COVID has shown us that work from home basically works. Like you don't see a huge negative impact in productivity and people really like it. And now what's happening is corporations are forcing their employees to come back in for like corporate culture, which like, what corporate culture are you trying to reinforce? Like toxicity and like having your employees spend 2 hours in traffic every day because you want them to sit in a cubicle and do the same work that they can do from home? Like, are you trying to get 40 hours of labor out of someone when the truth is that they could do the same job in 30 hours and have 10 hours off and like it won't affect your bottom line at all? It's just stupid. Like there's just so much idiocy and it's like a systemic problem that people are thinking that, workplace mental health is on the responsibility of the worker. Like it's dumb. Like in the original definition of burnout, like I'm serious, if you go and you look at the original definition of burnout, what separated it from depression is that it's caused from factors related to work. And if we want to fix this problem, it's not like increasing your meditation apps and like giving everyone organic produce. It's actually making changes within the workplace. And the other mind-numbing thing that like is just crazy is that making changes in the workplace is actually like good for the workplace. Like it's dumb that like every organization that I've gone to, let me just think about that. Yeah, I think I can say every organization. Every organization that I've gone to and we've implemented like a burnout, like mental wellness kind of plan that involves like those things being structured into part of their job is like, has been successful. And generally speaking, I've never heard from a company, and we have like good relations with these people, right? And they usually call us back and want us to do more and things like that. We've never heard from a company that like, hey, this is actually negatively hurting our bottom line, and like we don't think that this is a good intervention. Like I've never heard that before. And it's all kinds of things from like, you know, even like there was one hospital I was working at where like we decided that we were going to like meditate together every morning during rounds. Or that the first 10 minutes of the day was like everyone on the unit getting together with all the patients and offering like a group meditation that patient and staff can do together. And then you start rounds 10 minutes late. But the good news is that since everyone's like on the same like wavelength and everyone's kind of like calmed down and like chilled out, like even the patients are chill, like the staff is chill, like rounds moves faster. It's not like this 2.5 hour slog where everyone's like more efficient because they all meditated at the beginning of rounds. It's crazy. So, you know, I know that like there's a lot of stuff like the anti-work subreddit is growing really rapidly, and like I can see why, because the simple truth of the matter is that there's a gigantic scam that's being perpetrated right now, and there are all kinds of people that are part of it, including like the medical industry, because what we've managed to do is define burnout as an individual problem. People will say, I am burnt out. What should I do about it? And the truth is that there are some things that you can do. More recent research, like for example, over the last decade, research shows that burnout's actually 50-50, that half of it seems to be workplace-related stuff and the other half is like maybe not workplace-related stuff. So, you know, research is still evolving. But at the end of the day, I think like the biggest issue is that we're placing the responsibility of burnout on the individual as opposed to the company taking some degree of responsibility. And as long as this is going on, we can have as many meditation apps as you want. We can discover other kinds of superfoods and super grains and super probiotic kimchi related sodas and whatever. Like you can have as much health food related stuff as you want to. But at the end of the day, until employers start accepting responsibility that maybe part of the reason that my employees are burnt out has something to do with the way that their job is structured, this problem is going to continue to get worse. And like the employers are going to be the ones that suffer too, because like the other stupid thing is that it's really like a win-win situation. It's just like having happier employees means like more productive employees, and more productive employees means that it's like good for organizations. So like for those of y'all that are in situations where, you know, your workplace isn't ideal, like my condolences, and be really, really careful about, you know, drawing the line between what you can do and what you're responsible for, and honestly, like what needs to change at your job. And because like the truth of the matter is that like, you know, there's no amount of like personal stuff that you can do to really fix a bad work situation. Questions? Yeah, so people are saying like some people gotta go, right? Like just quit. And I think that's what we're seeing. Like, so in the United States, there's all this talk of a labor shortage. There isn't a labor shortage. There's like a wage shortage, right? There's an overabundance of crappy jobs that people are no longer willing to put up with. And so like it's not a problem of labor. It's not like they're like, I mean, I'm sure that some of it is labor related. Like people, you know, a lot of people died from COVID. A lot of people have like, you know, medical complications from COVID and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like it's not a labor shortage. It's just like people are not willing. Once you figured out like, okay, I can stay at home and make $1,200, or I can work in a super toxic environment and make $1,600. Like I'm just going to pass on the toxic environment because the extra $400, the opportunity cost of that is like not worth it. Right? It's like this stupid stuff that people have at work. Like, yeah, we're not going to give you a chair because we don't want to make you lazy. And we don't want other people to feel like you're lazy. Like, what is that even based on? Is there any research that shows that if you provide an employee a chair, that people purchase less stuff? Like, where is this stuff coming from? There's so many ideas in like corporate industry that are not based in science at all. Like, it's just, oh, there was Gork raid? Thanks, Gorp. Thanks a lot, bro. For those of y'all that are joining, so thank you for the raid. I was in the middle of a rant, so I didn't see you guys were here, but welcome. So welcome to Healthy Gamer. I'm Dr. K, and I just came back from TI, and we streamed about that actually yesterday, so hopefully you guys can catch the VOD. And now we're going to be talking about other stuff that is relevant to Dota players, like how workplaces are toxic. And we're also going to be talking about a little bit about Fin Dom, apparently, and pornography addiction, and like how to not get ghosted and things like that. So welcome, everyone. Did you win TI? In my heart of hearts, sure. So I had a very positive experience at TI, even though it was like rough in a lot of ways. And I know that, TI can be rough. It's rough for most of the people who go, right? Because the key thing about TI to remember is that there are 5 winners and 85 losers. So it's challenging. But I was very grateful for the opportunity to go. I think Evil Geniuses is awesome. I'm really thrilled that they invited me to accompany them. It was really fantastic hanging out with people. I also learned so much about Dota. Oh my God, there's so much to understand about Dota. There's like, man, it's such a deep game. Like, I really think that Dota is probably like the most complicated, the deepest strategic game I can think of. So I think it's deeper than Go. I think it's deeper than chess. I think it's deeper than LoL. And so, yeah. No, so I think like, I know there's a Dota versus LoL competition. But I think that, things that I think make Dota just like objectively deeper than LoL are the fact that there are flex positions, right? So like laning is not static. Like you can do a tri-lane, you can do like heroes can be played in multiple positions. Whereas like, so I think that in and of itself adds like an order of magnitude of complexity. Because LoL tends to be pretty static when it comes to laning. And heroes are sort of designed for the purpose of like having a particular role. Whereas in Dota, like heroes are purposely designed to be able to flex. So I think that in and of itself is like a pretty big difference. I don't understand LoL as well as I understand Dota. So there may be things about LoL that I'm missing out on that add layers of complexity compared to Dota. Fair enough. But based on my experience of the two games, like I think Dota is incredibly deep. I played a little bit of World of Warcraft and a little bit of FF14. Yeah, so I don't know too much about FPS. But I think the idea of like picking and banning, it adds, once again, like a ton of complexity. Right? I think that the downside for Dota is that because of its depth, like the learning curve is like super steep. So if you're talking about advantages of LoL over Dota, my understanding is that LoL is an easier game to get into and an easier game to learn, which I don't think is to be like underestimated in terms of like value that the game brings. So when people say SC2 has more depth, I don't know, man, because like SC2 at the end of the day has usually, just a few races and only has 2 players. So when you're thinking about like the depth of a game, I think that the more players that you have working in concert, chances are it's going to be like deeper because the number of permutations are higher. But you're welcome to, disagree and prove me wrong. I'm not saying that I'm objectively correct. I'm saying that's just my experience as a gamer. Let's stop the war. I mean, I think, so this is the other thing is that I don't know if people are placing a value judgment on depth of a game too, right? So like, I think it's okay so let's think about, so Go is a good example. So Go is an example of a game that like has a very, very simple rule set. Like you can learn the rules of Go within like 30 minutes. And so that's, I think, an advantage. Like chess has a more complicated rule set. It doesn't necessarily mean that a more complicated rule set makes for a better game, right? So I think if we really look at gaming, like why I love gaming is that there are like different layers of stuff, right? So you don't have to have a super deep game all the time. I think a good example of this is Artifact versus Hearthstone, where I really loved Artifact. I personally like it more than Hearthstone, but the truth is that Artifact is like mind-numbingly difficult to play. Like I could never play Artifact to relax or chill out, right? Like it's just so cognitively intensive that it's like, it feels like work. Whereas like the advantage of Hearthstone is that you know, even though like strategically and like RNG wise, it's like somewhat simpler than Artifact, it's like easier to play because it's a little bit more brain dead. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I think that's like part of the appeal. If we look at video games, like there are times where you want to play something intensive and there are times that you want to play something chill, which is what I think is so cool about being a gamer in the gaming industry. Is like the gaming industry has like, you know, a way to tickle everyone's pickle, if you will. Okay, more subreddit. Am I making enemies? Oh my goodness. Who knew that this is how I was going to make enemies? By sharing opinion. Like I'm saying, I mean, everyone, to each his own, right? Or her own. Like, play the games that you enjoy playing. I don't think that there's a pissing contest that needs to be had. I have my preferences and other people have their preferences, and that's totally cool. Like, we don't have to have the same preferences. We don't have to all play the same game. Yeah, and when people say I queue up for Dota, I don't know if I would advise that. Right? Because as much as I love the game, I think one of the biggest problems what you trade for in complexity is like a steep learning curve. So it's also kind of interesting because if you look at Dota as an esport, I think the player base over time is generally speaking declined, but the viewership has gone up. And I was stunned. I actually had a bizarre conversation that I never expected to have in my life yesterday. After streaming about TI, I walked out of my the office and my father-in-law was visiting us. And my father-in-law like had questions. So apparently he like, because I was out of town for a few weeks, right? So he like started reading about esports. So this dude's like, he's like Indian, okay? So like tried and true Indian, like grew up in India, moved here, you know, had kids and stuff. So I married his daughter. Super cool dude, but has never played a video game in his life. And he was like, yeah, I would like to see, like, it sounds very interesting. He was like fascinated by Dota as an esport. He started reading about like where all the players are from and he's like Googling this stuff. And it's like super cool. And then like he asked me, he's like, yeah, can I watch you? Can you show me how you play Dota? And I was like, what? Of all of the things for an Indian father-in-law to ask their son-in-law, can you show me how you play Dota is the last thing on the list that I would have expected. But I don't know exactly how it happened. I'm grateful for the opportunity. I think it's awesome. And then I was like, yeah, I mean, I can show you, you know, soon if you want to. And it's like, no. Like your mother-in-law wants to see too. Like she'll want to see you play as well. And I was like, what? And he's like, let's wait till she gets here and then you can show us both together. What? I don't know what they're expecting, but I think he's just curious about this stuff. So I think that's pretty cool. So we can fight about whether Dota is better or LoL is better. We can fight about CSGO and I can, you know, alienate half of my audience. But what I think is super cool is that like, you know, it's neat that something happened. So this is something I got to give Valve or whoever. I don't know who, the Dota community. I don't know who gets credit for this. But I never expected my father-in-law to like ask me to show him like how I play Dota. I don't think he's ready to play himself. But it's cool. Right? And it's neat because like gaming is now not something that you have to like be ashamed of. It's bizarre. And I think we're well past the point of, you know, trying to win each other over too. Because I could understand if you're like in the early stages of the relationship, sort of artificially taking an interest in like what, you know, your father-in-law's into or what your son-in-law's into in an effort to try to get to know them. But I think we're like well past that. I've been like married for a decade now. Wow. Has it been a decade? It has been a decade. We've got like kids and stuff. So I think we're good there. So it's cool, right? Okay, more subreddit? All right. Let's go. Okay. Ooh, okay. Let's do... Let me think. Oh, I was supposed to... I haven't taught meditation in a long time. Okay, let me think about which one we want to do, chat. Okay, let's do this one. All right. So next up, we have this post. So I'm addicted to FinDom and OnlyFans. I'm a 27-year-old virgin male. I've been addicted to porn since I was 13. I just recently found out about NoFap a few weeks ago and have been trying to turn my life around. But I'd say 4 months ago, one of the girls I subscribed to on OnlyFans said I should try FinDom to see if I liked it. And long story short, I somehow got addicted to FinDom and I can't stop. I've probably wasted over $3,500 on FinDom and OnlyFans since then. I sometimes feel like I can't get out of this addiction because it's so easy for me to get triggered and lose control. I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with FinDom, but it's basically humiliating men for money. I'm not sure how I got into it. The few girls I have interacted with in the past over text and in real life kind of laughed and made fun of me because I'm short and still a virgin. I've had a bad experience with women in my life, and sometimes I feel like no woman would ever want me. I'm thinking these reasons could be the root of this addiction. What do y'all think? I know this might sound weird, but I just wanted to inform people to do not try FinDom. It's way worse than just porn addiction, and it's depressing. I really need someone to encourage me to abstain from this, and I'd appreciate it if someone could. Okay. So the first thing is that this is a post from the NoFap subreddit, which I think can be a good subreddit for people to kind of get support. So we also want to, it's not from our subreddit. But there are a couple of things. I really like this post because I think it highlights a couple of really important issues that we're facing right now. So the first is that pornography is evolving. I know it's kind of scary, but so what used to be simple pornography is now evolving to take advantage of so many other psychological vulnerabilities and neuroscientific niches. So we had pornography back in the day, right? And we know that there's different kinds of pornography that people would get into. But what we've started to create now in sort of the realm of pornography are some of these other evolutions. And the reason that these things are evolving is because it's almost like a Darwinian situation where someone kind of comes up with a particular idea and then the market basically selects for the things that are the most successful. And why are these different things successful? It's because they're taking advantage of certain psychological needs that people have. So one example of this is OnlyFans. So why is OnlyFans so incredibly successful? I think a big part of it is simply that if you thought about pornography, all you could be in pornography was a passive participant. You could be a consumer, right? You couldn't actually participate. You could just consume the pornography. So you can watch it, but there's no interaction. There's no kind of relationship that develops. Or if a relationship does develop, it's wholly within your head. And along comes OnlyFans, which takes pornography and then adds an element of a real relationship to it, right? It adds an element of parasocial relationships. So now it's not just a random person that is triggering some kind of neuroscientific response to erotic pictures. Now it's I can interact with this person, and even in this person's case, the person on OnlyFans is making recommendations to me. So I'm able to form a relationship. So when you take all of the things that are addictive and reinforcing about pornography, and what I mean by that is just visual imagery and sounds of sexual things, which activate our brain and release dopamine and all that good stuff, allow us to do things calm down our amygdala and numb out our negative emotions and internal pain. So that old school porn could do all that. Now, when you have OnlyFans, you have the capacity to form some kind of real relationship with this person. You can interact with them. They'll respond to you. You can request things. Sure, there's a price tag for all that stuff, but OnlyFans has created a situation where there's essentially it's not just a passive consumer anymore, right? You're actually forming some kind of relationship with the content creator. We see that parasocial relationship on Twitch as well, right? So this is the way that the internet is evolving, where people are starting to form relationships with people online. Now, do I think that that's wholesale a negative thing? Not really, because I do think that this is a good example of we can use this tool, at least in my opinion, you're welcome to disagree, for good or for evil. The fact that you can connect to other streamers, so I still remember, A lot of people, when we do interviews or when people watch streamers, they'll connect with the streamer in some way, even be inspired by the streamer in some way, interact with the streamer in some way. And sometimes that can actually lead to like positive impacts, right? So one thing that I really appreciate, the whole purpose of this stream today is that people are posting questions that give me the opportunity to weigh in on things that are important to you guys. So I don't think that this phenomenon is by definition bad. I think most things in humanity and most scientific advancements are tools that can either be used for good or evil. So let's talk a little bit about FinDom in this person's particular situation. So this person kind of says, for all of you out there, don't try FinDom because it's way more addictive than regular pornography or even OnlyFans. And so then the question becomes, what determines whether a particular kind of pornography or like pornographic thing is more addictive or less addictive than something else? And what I've sort of found after, working with a bunch of people is that there's a set of psychological vulnerabilities that any given human being may have. And now what we're sort of discovering is that there's an array of different like sexual or pornographic like products that can tap into each of those vulnerabilities. And the same is actually true for like video games, because not everyone plays the same kind of video game, right? And so there's a lot of interesting research that's coming out of the University of Toronto. So they developed this model called Brain Hex, which basically looks at a personality analysis and how certain personalities of people will actually prefer certain kinds of video games. And so this kind of thing is also true for like other things on the internet. So some people get addicted to YouTube. Some people get addicted to Reddit. Some people get addicted to TikTok. Some people get addicted to Facebook, right? So there's something going on where there are a lot of different products and services out there. And depending on your individual vulnerabilities, or not even vulnerabilities, it could be personality. That's, your individual characteristics, let's call it that. You're going to get addicted to a particular thing. So what's going on in this situation, and why is it that people get addicted to FinDom? So I'm not sure about this person because I haven't really interacted with them. But in my experience, there are a couple of really, really important things at play here. And the first thing to understand is that a fundamental tenet of human psychology is that validation matters more than reassurance. So let me explain what that means. So when I'm a psychiatrist and I'm working with someone who's suicidal, what the default human idea is that if someone is suicidal, you should say, if someone says, I have no reason to live, the default response is to say, that's not true. You have so many reasons to live. Look at how awesome you are. You've got this, 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 and this. And what we know from a scientific perspective is that that is not very effective at reducing that person's suicidality. What is more effective than that is actually validation. So I know it sounds kind of weird, but as a psychiatrist, what I've personally found to be more effective is to, when I sit with a person who's suicidal, is to understand, okay, like really listen to them and say, I can see why you're suicidal, because the truth is that there is a lot of stuff in your life that isn't going well. And I have to actually validate that. I have to start by meeting them where they're at. I don't start by assuming that they're wrong and incorrect. I start by assuming or trying to understand what is in their mind that helps them come to that conclusion. And the cool thing about offering a validating perspective is then that actually makes it more effective when I say, hey, I understand that you don't feel like you have a whole lot of reasons to live right now, but I'm going to respectfully disagree. And I do think that you have a lot of reasons to live. Is it okay if I make my case to you? And so that's actually far more effective, because human beings on a very fundamental level are looking for validation. And this isn't just about suicidality. Like, we actually know that this is a very fundamental part of like human emotion and like the way that our human brain is wired. So as an example, if you look at studies on kids, okay, and if you want to freak out a child, the easiest way to freak out a child is to have a completely neutral expression. And neutral expressions like really, really freak people out. I know it sounds kind of weird. What does a neutral expression have to do with validation? Because a neutral expression validates nothing. So I know it sounds kind of weird, but we know that, when a kid stumbles and falls down, if they start crying and they're sad about it, and as a parent, what do? We pick up the child and we say, oh, no, did baby get hurt? Oh my God, poor little baby. It's okay, baby. I'm so sorry you got hurt. Oh, show me where the boo-boo is. Let me kiss the boo-boo and make it better. So if you look at that kind of response, it's a very validating response, and it works really, really well. When kids grow up with non-validating responses, they tend to end up with attachment issues. So we have a couple of videos about that. There's some stuff about that in Dr. K's guide if y'all are more interested. So these kids grow up to be anxious. And if you look at so there's a video on the anxious personality. And some people just have anxious personalities, and those personalities come from a lack of validation when growing up. There's also another really interesting thing about, so there's just kind of a side note from medicine. So one of my mentors was once telling me that, you can have psychosis, which is like hallucinating and things like that. But psychosis is not a diagnosis, it's a symptom. So sometimes psychosis can be caused by schizophrenia. Sometimes it can be caused by depression. So how can you tell whether psychosis is caused by schizophrenia or whether it's caused by depression? There's a complex diagnostic process. But there was a really interesting thing that one of my mentors told me. And they're like, there's a simple limbic test. So it's kind of a way to test your gut to determine whether the psychosis you're seeing is due to depression or schizophrenia. And so what my mentor told me is ask yourself this question if you're sitting across from a patient. If they were on the subway and there was a seat open next to them, would you sit down next to them? And I know it sounds kind of weird, but it's actually a very, very good limbic test. Because people with schizophrenia, I know it sounds kind of weird, but even when you see them on the street, you can sort of tell. And so how is it that your brain can tell the difference between someone who has schizophrenia and someone who doesn't? It actually comes down to flattened affect. So affect is the facial expression of emotion. And so when people have schizophrenia, their affect gets blunted. So their face becomes really, really neutral, and it sets us on edge because what happens in our brain is we don't really know what to expect from this person. So when when you can read someone's emotions, it actually makes you reassured in some way. And so blunted affect, flattened affect, and there's something about them that just sort of triggers alarm bells and makes people uncomfortable. It happens with kids too. So if you look at a kid with a neutral expression, it's going to be very invalidating for what they're feeling, right? Because if they're happy, you're not validating that. If they're sad, you're not validating that. And it's going to freak them out. So this is the key thing to remember is that validation is a very, very core thing that human beings are looking for. So now circling back to the FinDom, why is it that this stuff is potentially more addictive than OnlyFans or regular pornography? And if we look at that person's post, we see that this person already has a confidence issue, right? I'm 5'4", women will make fun of me, I'm a virgin. They even identify in the first sentence of their post, I'm 27-year-old virgin, right? It's the second attribute, even before male. So this person identifies with the idea of being a virgin. So this person identifies with sort of being someone that is going to be rejected by women. And along comes FinDom, which are paying women to humiliate him, right? So why would someone do that? Why would someone spend more money than maybe they have or they feel comfortable with to have someone treat them like crap? What kind of reinforcement are you getting there? Because it's creating a negative emotion in them, but it's also highly, highly addictive or reinforcing behavior, right? So what's going on there? And I think essentially what's going on is that it's incredibly validating, right? Because if we have a particular view of ourselves and someone else takes that view to the extreme and they're offering an extreme form of validation. Because if you're a 5'4" virgin and you don't feel like you're a good person and you don't feel like anyone will ever treat you well, you will actually pay money to someone to reinforce that idea with you. It's the same reason why we have cognitive biases for people who are narcissistic, right? So people who are narcissistic will seek validation from wherever they can because finding concordance with the outside world is really what our brain craves. And so if you have a self-esteem problem, be really, really careful because if you find something that will reinforce your idea of low self-esteem, you will actually gravitate towards it. We also see this in people who have had abusive relationships because a lot of people wonder why on earth does this person keep on getting into relationships with abusive people? And the short answer, I'm oversimplifying stuff. It's obviously more complicated than that. But the short answer is that when people have been abused, especially when you have childhood abuse, you develop an identity of being not worthy, right? And then something really bizarre happens if you have that identity of not being worthy and that like you're not a good person, and you enter into a relationship with someone who treats you with respect. The bizarre thing is that people don't feel good about that. It actually creates a ton of anxiety. They don't actually like it. What happens in the mind of someone who's been abused, who enters into a healthy relationship, is like they get really confused and they become paranoid. They're like, why is this person treating me this way? Like, what is going on? Like, when is it going to change? Like, why are they saying this to me? What's their game? What are they trying to get? I don't understand. This doesn't make sense. Because our brain has developed this idea of what to expect from other human beings. And when things don't line up, it makes us deeply uncomfortable. The flip side of that coin is validation, right? So like if you think about, I don't know if you guys have been in this situation, but I remember when I was in school, like, and I got bullied, like there were times where I would engage in being the recipient of bullying because it like made sense to me, right? Like, because that's my job, is to be bullied. Like those are the people who are like the jocks and the captain of the football team, and I'm the loser. So I'll even engage in situations that replay that kind of idea. There's also research on this from the psychotherapy. So there's this idea called the repetition compulsion, which is like, there's some really interesting papers written about that if you guys want further reading. But I think that it's kind of interesting because essentially what's happening with like these evolutions of pornography is that there are these kinds of vulnerabilities. And if you have the vulnerability where you feel like you are unworthy of a woman's attention, and then you start paying a woman to give you the kind of attention that you feel you deserve, it's going to be incredibly validating and incredibly addictive. So then the question becomes like, what do I do about this? I don't think abstinence from the thing is sufficient. So is it a step in the right direction? Absolutely. But trying to abstain from an addictive behavior without understanding the roots of the behavior tends to be the recipe for relapse. And we've seen this time and time and time again. Like, I've seen this as an addiction psychiatrist where people will like, say like, okay, this is the last time, like, I gotta quit. But they don't actually do the work to figure out. It's not the fact that you need to quit. What you really need to understand if you want to overcome an addiction is not the fact that you need to quit. It's to understand what the addiction does for you in the first place. What is the addiction doing for you? What is the purpose it serves? What is the advantage that you gain from engaging in this addiction? And once you start to explore that, once you get to the roots of where the addiction is born from, where it comes from, and as you start to address those things, the actual addictive behaviors will start to like wither. They're like leaves on a tree where once you take out the roots, the leaves themselves, that's what you see, that's what you experience. They will all start to automatically wither once you take the root of the problem out. So if y'all are struggling with some kind of, new addiction, and I've seen so many of them, you got to understand that like this is happening for a reason, right? That like the internet is a place where it allows for a lot of Darwinian selection. We see this for video games, we see it for content distribution platforms, and we even see it for pornography. And the kind of pornography that you get addicted to, it's not just pornography addiction, right? It's not one thing. There's actually a different kind of psychological process, whether you're addicted to pornography or you're addicted to OnlyFans or you're addicted to Findom or you're addicted to another thing. All of those things are going to be working on your brain in slightly different ways. And so if you want to overcome those specific addictions, it involves understanding what is this particular manifestation of pornography doing for me? What is the psychological vulnerability that it's kind of exploiting and take advantage of? What is it doing for me that other kinds of pornography don't do for me? And once you understand what those fundamental psychological needs are, then you can start working on them. And as you work through those fundamental psychological needs, the need for pornography or whatever you're into will actually start to reduce. Questions? So this is, okay, so first question is, okay. So how do you figure out what your needs are? So that's a really good question. So I'd say that, so the first thing is you can definitely work with a therapist. I saw a couple of posts that people were saying like, my therapist was like, just masturbate less. I'm sorry you got a therapist like that. Sucks. You can absolutely work with a therapist for pornography addiction. There are people that sort of specialize in it and things like that. But I'd say that you can even do a lot of this work on your own, right? So like you can just ask yourself, like, on a given day, like let's say you've got FinDom versus OnlyFans versus like pornography, and you'll notice that you're gravitating towards one versus the other. So when you gravitate towards it, I know it's kind of weird, but just ask yourself the question, like, how does this make me feel compared to something else? So if, let's say, your problem is like OnlyFans versus like, let's say Pornhub, okay? And so then ask yourself, like, what is it about OnlyFans? What do I feel when I watch OnlyFans that like, what do I feel? How is this different? And this is where like meditation can actually be really helpful. I'm not saying meditation for the purpose of just meditate and then it'll get better. The purpose of meditation is to learn a systematic way of introspection, right? So you like kind of close your eyes and like you kind of think about Pornhub for a second. And then like you kind of like think, okay, what is this going to do for me? What feels unsatisfying about it? And then if you look at something like OnlyFans, and then like you can kind of ask yourself the question there too, what feels so satisfying about this? What is it about this that really draws me in? And what you'll find is probably something along the lines of like, I feel noticed here. I feel like I have a relationship. I feel a connection to this person. And then what you kind of tunnel down into is that, okay, so like, it's not just pornography. It's like pornography plus connection. So what I really want is like some kind of sexual relationship in which like I feel connected to the other person. And once you become aware of your own needs, that's the first step to actually overcoming them. I do think that this is where like, a systematic approach and also working with an individual like a therapist, I don't know if this is really, I want to say that this is probably outside of the realm of coaching. So coaches do have a lot of experience with people who are, addicted to pornography. It's like a big part of our community. And at the same time, I think really at that level, you may be better benefited by a therapist as opposed to a coach, but you can always give coaching a try. But I think it's just doing good introspective work, right? It's like really looking at yourself and asking yourself, what is it about this that really attracts me? Are all addictions bad? Yes, I'd say so, because I'd say the definition of an addiction is something that impairs function. So a lot of people in the early days of Healthy Gamer would ask me, back when we talked primarily about video game addiction, how do I know if I'm addicted? And the short answer is, if it causes a problem, it is a problem. So how do you draw the line between like a healthy amount of pornography use or an unhealthy amount of pornography use? If it starts to cause problems in your life, like it prevents you from engaging in relationships, if it prevents you from doing other things, if you become dependent on it for emotional like suppression or emotional coping, then it's a problem. So if it causes a problem, it is a problem. Does the addiction go deeper than I'm lonely and want a girlfriend? Maybe, right? That's not something that I can answer. So this is like what we try to do at Healthy Gamer, is like there isn't a answer to this question. So this is why like our approach at Healthy Gamer is not like, and this is what the internet does, right? So like the internet will have like a blog. And in the blogger, the person is like, here is how you fix this problem. Or you'll have someone who's like, one of these success gurus who's like, here's the formula to success. It's a video course that you can purchase that's going to be the same for every single person out there, because it's a guaranteed formula for success. If you don't like it, your money back guaranteed. Here's how I make 18 figures a month. It's the formula for success. So everyone out there is asking for what's the right answer? So our approach at Healthy Gamer, and this is a big reason why Dr. K's guide was created the way that it was, is Dr. K's guide is not linear, right? It's like, because the idea behind Dr. K's guide is that one answer is not going to work for every person. So if you're struggling with depression, there's going to be clinical aspects of it and non-clinical aspects of it. What does your depression manifest as? Is this a sense like, are you depressed because you've fallen behind? Are you depressed because you have protective hopelessness? Are you depressed because you grew up in an environment with conditional love, where your sense of worth is tied to your accomplishments? So you can't learn how to be happy unless you're successful. So what is the origin of your depression? Because for different people, it's going to be different. And this is why what we try to advocate, this is why we answer questions like this. This isn't just like, here are the features of pornography addiction. We'll sometimes do that as well. But we try to answer these specific questions because the truth is that pornography addiction is not monolithic. It's not one disease. It's actually a plethora of different diseases that affect people in unique ways. It's the same reason why addiction is not one disease. People have a drug of choice, right? Some people get addicted to alcohol. Some people get addicted to cocaine. Some people get addicted to marijuana. And each of these substances interacts with us in a different way. The substances are also a little bit different because it does appear that there's a genetic vulnerability to particular kinds of addiction. Unclear whether that's true in pornography or not. But what I really have seen is that if you want to like overcome your pornography addiction, you have to take an individual approach. You can use these general principles, but that's why like in Dr. K's guide, like a lot of his exercises, right? That's why we have a coaching program. And we started with the coaching program and then did Dr. K's guide second, because what we really found is that to create substantive change in your life, you need a personal approach. There isn't a formula to success. There's just your formula to success. Your challenges, your genetic makeup, your circumstances, your living conditions, your traumatic experiences, your strengths, the things that you're good at, the things that you're passionate about, the things that you're inspired by, all of those are highly individual. So if you want to put your life together, it involves understanding all of those factors. You know, a walkthrough only works if everyone has the same, if everyone is playing the same game and starts from the same location. You guys get that? The only reason we can have a stock walkthrough on the internet is because everyone spawns in the same place in a video game. You can't create a walkthrough when there are 1,000 different spawn points. It's impossible. So this is the big problem, is that like everyone out there is giving stock solutions to shared problems, but it's been my experience, and I may be heavily influenced because I'm a clinician, right? So I tend to work with individuals, is that if you want to put together your life, you can't use a stock solution. You have to use an individual solution. So going back to, does the addiction go deeper than I am lonely and want a girlfriend? It could, right? But for some people, getting a girlfriend will be enough. For some people, engaging in a relationship that offers authentic connection and has a sexual component will definitely help reduce the pornography use or whatever. And for some people, it may be insufficient, right? Because for some people who get a girlfriend, we've heard this a lot, by the way, that once you get a girlfriend, like the pornography becomes really weird and you get filled with guilt because you're watching pornography because your brain is habituated to it, right? So it's not just like, it's not a psychological vulnerability. At some point, it becomes a habit. So now if I'm habitually addicted to pornography and I start having a relationship with a woman, I will feel guilty because like I have these habits, this habit circuitry that causes me to still watch pornography because you can't drop it like can't drop it like that. And then once I feel guilty, then what that guilt does is pushes me more towards pornography because there's good evidence that pornography is used as an emotional coping mechanism. So the more guilty you feel, the more pornography you watch. The more pornography you watch, the more guilty you feel because you've got a girlfriend. And then you don't want to tell her. And then at some point she finds out and then you're embarrassed and she feels upset. She feels like she's not enough for you. She gets concerned that she's not enough for you. And then she starts crying and then you feel even guiltier and it's back to the porno. It's like, it's a whole vicious cycle, right? And it comes down to understanding, what is the pornography doing for you? Is it a source of emotional coping? And once you understand that, then you can hopefully have a conversation with her and you can have a conversation with your girlfriend. And it's like, you know, hey, like I've been doing this for a long time. Like I really value you. I care about you. You know, I find our sexual relationship to be gratifying. And, you know, it's something that I'm working on. Like, and then like, it's also about like communications and asking questions, right? It's about asking your girlfriend, how do you feel when I watch pornography? How does it make you feel when I do this? Are you okay with it? Or are you not okay with it? Is it okay that like, I don't like it actually? Is it okay if I share that? Right? So it's about communication. It's about understanding. These are the bedrocks that we try to like instill in people in Healthy Gamer. Just to kind of echo, people are asking what kind of need does FinDom fulfill? I'm not entirely sure, but I would guess that it is like a validation of your low self-worth, right? Because what is it doing? It's like you're paying for someone to tell you that you're worthless or like you're not, you know, sexually capable or whatever. So what it's actually doing is validating those feelings. And the weird thing is that a therapist will validate those feelings as well. They'll just do so in a healthier way, right? They'll validate those feelings and then try to work on them and say, hey, I totally get where you're coming from. You're 5'4", you're a virgin. It seems like you've had bad luck with women, or maybe not bad luck. You may feel like you're not a worthy person. I totally get why you believe what you believe. It's not stupid for you to believe that. I mean, you're a smart guy and there's a reason you believe it. And I happen to think that there's more to the story. And I don't think that the first 27 years of your life have to dictate what happens in the next 27, right? That's the healthier way to deal with it. Whereas what FinDom does is they just give you the validation and they're like, they have a financial incentive to have you come back next week, so they're not going to try to fix it. Does that make sense? So people who are asking questions about what about anxious avoidant personality disorder. So that's why we made Dr. K's guide. I think we have one YouTube video about, attachment theory. And then there's a whole video about it in Dr. K's guide. So I'd encourage y'all to check that out. So one person saying, what if it's just pleasure? Is that the reason why you're, what if you just enjoy it? So that's totally fine. But I think if we look at this person's post, the person is like, I don't want to be doing this. And if y'all are out there, be careful. Don't do it too, because I got stuck and this is a problem. The person themselves is saying that it's a problem. So I don't think it's just pleasure. So that's where it goes back to the question of, what's an addiction? It's like, if it causes a problem, it is a problem. If you're in a kink of a particular kind and you're in a healthy relationship and you're not spending a ton of money on it, then by all means, engage in your kink, go for it. Right? There's no problem with kinks. It's just, when things cross a particular threshold, when you're spending too much money on it, when it's negatively impacting your ability to engage in a relationship, then it is a problem. So someone else is asking, is it worse if I'm not 5'4" but in the same situation? No. So here's the thing. It is completely useless to compare your situation to anyone else's situation. What difference does it make? If you're 5'7" and you're a 27-year-old virgin, 5'4", 27-year-old virgin, you should take your situation as it is and work from where you are. The fact that other people have it better or worse than you has nothing to do with your path forward, right? If I'm lost in the Sahara Desert and other people are lost in the Florida Everglades, it doesn't matter how the people in the Florida Everglades are going to find their way back to civilization, because I'm lost in the desert. I don't even have water. My problem is unique. And if I'm lost in the Everglades, it doesn't matter that there are people lost in the Sahara Desert. I still have my problem, which is that I'm lost in the Everglades. So this is a key thing that you guys need to really be careful about, which is be careful about comparison and the comparison of your problems to other people's problems. Because I don't know that comparing your problems to someone else's problems actually helps you at all. The whole philosophy that we're advocating for is for you to have a personalized approach to your own problem solving. Now, by all means, you can try to learn from other people, right? But don't think that, it doesn't matter that someone else has harder problems than you do or easier problems than you do. And we see this problem a lot, actually, in our content creator program, because these are people who are in a lot of ways, privileged and lucky and financially successful. And so what they think is if they're suffering, they don't deserve to suffer. And but that's not true. And so what they'll oftentimes do, one of the biggest things that we try to do in our content creator program, is give people the license to suffer, because they don't deprive themselves of that opportunity, because they're like, oh, there are people who have it worse than I do. Therefore, I have no right to complain. And then they just propagate their unhappiness because they're invalidating themselves. I don't have a right to complain. And it's then what they're doing, I want you guys to think about a toxic, abusive parent who's what are you complaining about? You have nothing to complain about. You have everything. We've done everything for you. What the hell is wrong with you? Stop complaining. You're so lucky. When a toxic, abusive parent does it, we say that's bad. But when a streamer does it to themselves, we say, good job, because you're not allowed to suffer, because you're privileged, right? Screw you. Who are you to complain? We have become the toxic, abusive parents for successful streamers as the internet. And internet hate, it's totally fine to hate on a streamer. I want you, I've recently seen some bad internet hate towards someone who's very successful. And it's it's sad because people get to screw up. People no one deserves the kind of hate that they get. But as the internet, we're just screw you. Like I can be completely toxic to you, and that's okay because you're privileged and successful. So your privilege gives me a pass for my toxicity. Right? And like that's a problem. That's a real problem. Right? So I don't think it's like good to do that. Should you give people feedback? Sure. Like, is it okay to constructively criticize? I would hope so. Right? So people have like constructively criticized me, thankfully, and I loved it. Like I really liked it. Someone posted, a couple months ago about how they thought that like my perspective on Ayurveda was biased and not based in science, and some of the statements I were making were unfounded, and they turned out to be right. And so like now I'm doing my homework again. And that's good. Like criticism on the internet can be good, but like what I'm really grateful to the community is that they didn't just like make a hate post. They were like, hey, here's like, we think you're making a mistake, and like, here's what we believe. And it's like, it's good. I'm grateful. Like criticism is awesome. It makes us better as human beings. But I don't think that people deserve hate. It's good. Okay, let's do something else. Okay. Someone's asking if I don't have a particular job in mind, what do I major in college? Major in what you want, bro. Easy. Or girl. Okay. Next up. I got ghosted. Now I'm wondering if I know how to be in a healthy relationship. So I'm a 30-year-old guy who feels like he drives people away. Okay. I can be, while not wanting to be, very guarded and secretive. I think this stems from a childhood of being bullied by my family for no apparent reason. It was a common occurrence to be told by family that I was an embarrassment, had the wrong personality, was an asshole, or a piece of shit. I remember things like being told as a kid to list out loud the people that would come to my hypothetical funeral as a way of proving to me that no one will mourn my death and be accused of lying when I go to spend time with my friends, because it was unbelievable that anyone would like me. It was hurtful and confusing. It felt like relationships were guessing games where I was always the loser. I became a loner. Now I work hard to connect with new people. I've noticed that when new relationships don't go well, or the way I would like them to, I blame myself. I think a good example of this is a girl I like that I have been talking to since March. When we first started talking, it was amazing how quickly we clicked. It surprised me. We eventually had less time for me as she got busier in her personal life. When she started to get busy, I got nervous. A lot of people have ghosted me, so I fearfully and baselessly suspected she was trying to break contact. I never addressed these feelings with her, though. My response was to text her a lot, almost as if to remind her I still existed. I was stuck in a pattern of wanting to talk to her, but then worrying about giving her space or doing something wrong until I would convince myself to text anyway. Soon my texts grew longer, hers shorter. This would continue until she suddenly blocked me a couple of days ago. Friends have been telling me not to blame myself and that I did nothing wrong. But shouldn't I blame myself? I feel like I drove her away. I genuinely really liked her, even loved her, but I feel like I was stuck in my head, never including her. I also feel like this relationship was burdened by my slowly obsessing over her without paying enough attention to her as an actual person. I feel like I ruined things. Dr. K, how can I have healthy relationships with myself and others going forward? Why do I become guarded and obsessive in relationships? How do I deal with my surprise when women like me back? Let's upvote this. All right, so this is a great post. So I like this post for a number of reasons. The first reason I like this post is because the person who posted it is an absolute boss. Okay? So, let me compose my thoughts. So this is a post about someone who enters into relationships with people, is guarded, generally speaking, had a very traumatic upbringing, and then something happens in the relationship where they click right away, they get along really well, and then as circumstances in life cause the person that they're talking to kind of pull back, they become very, very clingy, and then like end up driving the other person to block them, okay? So like if this is a post essentially about someone who like starts to form a healthy relationship, gets overly clingy, overly invested, and then ends up driving the other person away. So why does this happen, and how do we get out of this, right? So how do we stop being creepy people that women have to block? So the first thing to understand is that this is all about understanding the evolution of your needs throughout a relationship, okay? So to begin with, we have a history of a traumatic upbringing. And so like, this is one question I would ask for this person is, when this person was treated traumatically or abusively, how did it make you feel, and what did you do? Okay, so this is really important, because sometimes when we're treated like abusively, like emotionally abusively, like by parents and other people, we feel responsible for making them feel better and liking us, right? So like, if this person is being mean to me, that's not on them, that's on me. And we see the current of self-blame throughout this kind of thing. Then something else is interesting is happening is that this person's, when they go to their friends, right, they're saying like, hey, this situation happened. I started texting this person more and more stuff and they weren't responding to me and they blocked me. Is it my fault? And then your friends do what? They reassure you and they say, no, man, of course it's not your fault. She's a total B-word. Like, it's totally like, I can't believe she was so cruel to you. Like, you're not doing anything wrong. You're doing everything great. And this is where I gotta say, if you find yourself in a pattern of like people blocking you, maybe you need to take some responsibility. And this is why I think this person is an absolute boss, because like, they're asking this question in a very authentic way, right? They don't want to continue doing this. They're recognizing that there are things going on and that maybe they need to change them. So I would actually say that, does this blame lie with you? At least 50% is what I would say. Because remember that in any relationship, you have a contribution. The good news is that the blame does lie with you. You also have the power to change things, right? So you can't have agency without responsibility. Responsibility doesn't come without agency. If it's if I have the power to win, then I also have the power to lose. And so if I get credit for the win, I also have to take credit for the loss. So now let's try to understand what's going on here. And I think the key thing to understand here is the evolution of internal needs as you get clingier and clingier. So in the first phase of the relationship, you meet someone, y'all click right away. So like, you have some emotional needs. They're not very powerful at that point because it's early stage in the relationship. And on the other end of the relationship, they're not really powerful as well. Like, you guys are kind of like, you're kind of chilling. You guys like each other. You hang out a little bit. It's a low investment relationship that feels really natural. And then what starts to happen? So like, things were fine until this person got busy in their personal life, right? So the girl that this person is talking to starts to get busy. So due to a circumstance in this person's life, they start becoming less available. Now, how does the poster respond to this? This is where things get really interesting, because they start to get anxious and they start to get clingy, right? They start to like, even though in their head, they understand that like, this person is busier now, so they can't text as much as they used to. That's not the way that you respond emotionally, right? You start to get really, really anxious. You start texting more, okay? So now you are adding another need into this relationship. And I don't know if this is gonna make sense, but now your anxiety, you are actually looking to the other person to fix. So when you send a text, like a long text, what you're looking for is for them to send an equally long text. Because now you're worried. You're like, oh, what if this person doesn't like me? What if they're drifting away? Let me like do something big in the relationship. Let me send a big text. And if they send a big text back, then I will be soothed. I'll be like, oh, thank God. They really do care about me. Or if they apologize or they say, oh, like, I've been really busy lately. I'm sorry I haven't had time for you. Like, that's going to make you feel good. So now you're adding a new need, an emotional need into the relationship where you need this person to tell you, hey, I still want to be your friend. Hey, don't worry about it. You're looking for reassurance from that anxiety as this person is starting to pull away. And where does that anxiety come from? It comes from the fact that people have pulled away from you in the past, right? It comes from the idea that like, you've been taught that you're like not a worthy person, that people don't want to be your friend. And so now what happens is when you like grow up in a situation where like literally your parents traumatize you by saying, who's going to be at your funeral? Ain't no one going to be at your funeral because no one wants to be your friend. So that samskar, that psychological trauma is carried in your mind. So then when this person starts to pull away because of like work-related stuff or other things going on in her life, that fear in your mind activates. And it's like, oh my God, I know in my head logically that this person is just busier, but what if what my parents told me all along is true? That this person, that they really don't want to be my friend. So to alleviate that anxiety, you send a big text, right? You send a frequent text. And this person, I mean, this is why I think this person's done a lot of introspection. So I want you to look at this. When she started to get busy, I got nervous. So what is the nature of that nervousness? A lot of people have ghosted me. So I fearfully and baselessly suspected she was trying to break contact. This is important. It wasn't baseless. This isn't baseless, right? Because it's happened to you before. You need to validate that feeling. And so here's the thing. So my response was to text her a lot, almost as if to remind her I still existed. And this is the key thing that you need to work on. Because at this point, you feel internally that you don't exist in the relationship. So you were trying to get her to tell you like, hey, you exist in this relationship, right? So now your emotional needs are creating a situation where you are asking something of her without her realizing what you're asking because you haven't ever told her. So you're looking for a sign from her that you still exist in the relationship. But she doesn't know that, right? So like now what's happening is you're feeling all of these emotional needs, like you're feeling like clingy and you're feeling like don't pull away, like, hey, please remember I exist. Please remember I'm your friend. Like say something to me. And as you put all of those needs into your text messages, like empathically between the lines, like reading between the lines, like there's something like desperate in those text messages, she gets confused because she's like, what is going on here? Right? And it makes sense because you haven't actually explained to her how you feel. You're just like sending these really long text messages that she's not reciprocating. And so like then she starts to pull away because she doesn't understand what's going on here because now you've added a layer of needs into the relationship that she's unaware of. As she starts to pull away, it reinforces everything, right? So as she pulls away more, the anxiety increases. You need to remind her even more that you exist because as her responses get shorter, you start to disappear in her mind. And as you disappear in her mind, the anxiety gets worse. The need for some kind of response gets worse. The reassurance gets worse. So then you send even longer text messages and you inject an even more powerful need into the relationship. And she gets even more confused. Because she's like, what's going on here? Like, this guy's sending me like 14 texts and like, what's up with this? And so then what she does is send a shorter response. And as she sends a shorter response, you shrink, right? You start to fade away out of existence even more. And as you feel that fading away, the desperation increases. Hey, remember I'm here. Remember I'm here. I'm a person. I have feelings. Don't forget about me. Please, please, please don't forget about me. That's what your texts start to say. Don't forget about me. I exist. And she doesn't know what to do with that. Because that's not actually what you're saying, right? She's just getting these really long text messages. And then she has no choice but to block you. And so then what happens when she blocks you, you get reinforced, right? Oh, what my parents said all along is true. Is that people don't want to be my friend. That it's not that I don't deserve friends. Now another person, I've ceased to exist in another person's mind. And then your mind will say, this is how it's been all along. This is the truth of the world. You will never exist in anyone's mind, right? That's what it tells you in those dark moments. It's the voice in your head that you carry with you that now has been reinforced. And then you go to your friends and you say, hey, what's going on here? And your friends say, oh, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. It's on her. It has nothing to do with you. You're great. You're an awesome person. We like you. And so that can be very reassuring in some way, but you have to remember that if this pattern is repeating in your life, there's a reason it's repeating, right? Like there's a reason, there's something going on that you're injecting into these relationships where people are ghosting you. And I suspect the main thing that you're injecting is this anxiety, this fear that people are like going away. And this person even kind of says it where they kind of say, I get stuck in my own head. And this is where the relationship falls apart. Because a relationship is between two people. And if you get stuck in your own head, you're like playing your own tune, right? It's like, imagine you're like trying to dance with someone and there's like music playing, but then you've got headphones that's playing a different song. And so you guys are trying to dance in rhythm and they're playing to like the music that's playing and like they're listening to some waltz, okay? Because you're at a wedding. And then you've got like headphones on and you're listening to Tupac. And like the kind of dancing that you're going to be doing to the music in your own head is something that they can't dance to because they don't hear it. So the more you get stuck in your own head, like you're no longer in a relationship, right? Because you're engaging in this relationship with like operating from your own thinking. And if you don't communicate with her, then the other person doesn't understand what you're listening to. They just see you like convulsing on the dance floor and they're like, I don't know how to dance with this person. And so then they step off the dance floor. So are there things that you can do about it? Absolutely. The first thing is like understand when the music starts playing in your head. Because if you look at this relationship, they're saying at the beginning, everything's fine, right? So at the beginning, we're both dancing the same music. And then she starts to get busy at work. And then you're like, your brain is like, I remember this. She's busy at work. Let me put the headphones on and let me start listening to something else. Okay? And then you get stuck in your own head and then you're operating from that space. You're doing all this work and then you separate from her, right? So she's over here. You guys are together and then you start getting in your own head, but like she doesn't understand what's going on here. So like you start to deviate off this way and then she's kind of going this way. And then it's like, then the relationship falls apart. So if you want to be successful in a situation like this, the first thing to understand is what are the emotions that arise as this stuff happens? And more importantly, as these emotions arise, how do they influence your behavior? Because if you're being driven by emotions to do particular things and they are not on the same wavelength, they're going to be taken aback by what you're doing and they're not going to know how to interact with you. Because now you're dancing to your own tune. And they're like trying to dance with you and it's like, hey, we used to be dancing and now you're kind of like dancing on your own. I'm confused. How do I participate in this relationship? And then since people don't know how to have healthy conversations, right? So like, the right thing for her to do in that situation is, hey, like, you're sending me all these text messages, like, what's going on? Like, help me understand what's going on. Like, like you seem anxious to me. So ideally she would be able to prompt the conversation, but instead what we do is we just ghost people because that's like what happens nowadays, right? So are you somewhat responsible if you're in this situation? I'd say yes. I think it's time to take responsibility. Are you to blame? No. So I don't blame you for it. I don't think you're a bad person. I don't think it's like, in a sense, or I'd say is it your fault, sort of, but I think it's absolutely excusable. Because your brain has been programmed in a particular way. You have these fundamental needs that have never been met that allows you to be secure in a relationship. Because this person can't tolerate someone else pulling away from the relationship, even for things that have nothing to do with the relationship, like real life getting in the way, work getting busy. So when someone else pulls away, you can't tolerate that anxiety. You can't tolerate that distance. And when you can't tolerate the anxiety, it causes you to change your behavior. And when you change your behavior, now you're dancing to your own tune. So all the messages are operating from like a place inside your head, which the other person isn't aware of. So they're like, they get freaked the F out and then they start to pull away and then they end up ghosting. So I'd say first, understand. As these feelings arise, what are you afraid of? What's going on? Why do you feel like you have to text her? Why does she need to know that you exist? Because that's the key thing. What is it like to feel like you don't exist anymore in this person's life? And process those feelings. Because as you process those feelings and you reduce the fuel in that fire, then the behaviors will naturally go away, right? You have to remove the emotional energy that leads to the clingy behaviors. It's not sufficient to just not text. Because then what'll happen is if you force yourself to not text, you'll force yourself to not text and then it'll be a tension in you. It'll start to build up. Don't text, don't text, don't text, don't text, don't text. And then it'll reach a cresting point and then you won't be able to control it. And then it's going to be like, it's like a release where you have to text. You can't control it anymore. Oh, I have to text. And then you feel like, oh, thank God. Okay, like, notice me now. Notice me. I can't control myself. Notice me. And then she's like, what's happening here? You're doing all this, you're dancing this whole opera in your head and she doesn't know how to keep up. And so then she withdraws. So understand the emotions that arise first and foremost and work on those emotions. Work on those needs. Understand what your emotional needs are in the relationship and how they evolve. And the only way that a successful relationship is going to work is when your emotional needs can be at least understood by the other person. And then hopefully, if you're lucky, that person is willing to meet you halfway and try to do what they can for your emotional needs. Great post. So then someone else is saying, how do you handle when she is really leaving? You let her go, right? So this is hard, but someone's asking, how do you handle when she's really leaving? So the answer is simple. You let her go. And this is the key thing. What makes it hard to let her go? Because we assume that the reason she's leaving is because of us. Whereas the truth is that most people in life, when they part ways, they do so because of 1,000 reasons that have nothing to do with you, right? If you think about the friends that I had in high school, why am I not friends with most of them anymore? It's because of circumstance. I went to high school, then I went to college in a different city, and then I went to medical school in a different state, and then I did residency in the same state, but people went their separate ways. And so I entered people's lives, and then I left people's lives. And it has nothing to do with them, because that's what life is. Right? Life is like a meeting of it's moments in time where you connect with another human being. And for some people, those moments are short, and for some people, those moments are long. And you have to understand that not everything in the world, people leaving your life may not have anything to do with you. And even in the sense, if it does have something to do with you, that's okay too. Because even if someone says, hey, I don't think we're compatible, that's okay, right? You're not going to be compatible with every person on the planet. You're not going to be compatible with every person that you date. That's the reason that you date. And you let people go their way and you go your way. Because at the end of the day, if someone wants to leave you, let them. What are you going to do? Pin them down and force them into a relationship with you? You deserve a better relationship with that. The relationship that you want is one where someone wants to be with you and feels comfortable being with you. That's what you really deserve, is a real relationship. So it's tough. Yeah, I like You on Netflix. I think it's great. I'm on season 2 right now. Okay. So do we need shorter text messages? Absolutely. Right? So I don't know how, you can't expect someone to keep up with all of the stuff that you're doing in your head. No relationship is going to work like that, right? When you're working through bunches of anxiety, there's tons of anxieties floating out there. You try to communicate with someone over text, they're not going to, they're operating with 10% of the information where your text is coming from. So that's not going to work. So you have to let people know, you either have to process the crap in your head so that you're kind of back on the same page with them, or you need to let them know where you are so that you give them the opportunity to catch up to you. And the more you progress up here, the more you build castles in the sky or read into relationships or think that the relationship is more than it is. Check out OnlyFans, for example. The more blindsided the other person is going to be. How is someone supposed to participate in a relationship where you've advanced it 10,000 years in your head? Yeah, so someone is saying, I can't avoid being so attached because I can't make friends. Absolutely, right? So that's the same as this post. That's why I shared it, and I thought it was a great post. Because it is the inability to make friends that makes every potential friend so much more attached. You get so attached to everyone. And it's the fact that you get so attached to them that you kind of drive them away. And so you're kind of stuck in this loop of I have no friends, and therefore anytime I have the possibility of a friend, I put too much on them, because you take all that luggage from the past and you dump it into this relationship. And when you dump it on them, it's too much for them to handle, so then they leave. And then when they leave you a piece of luggage too. So now you've got one more piece of luggage, and then the next person comes along, and you dump 10 pieces of luggage on them. And it's too much for them to handle. They're I can't carry all this stuff. And then they leave, and then you have 11 pieces of luggage. So it's really hard. Don't get me wrong, it's very hard. And so that's where I think the solution is to let go of the luggage, right? Like you have to work through that stuff. You have to work through what's it like being alone year after year after year. What's it like engaging in relationship after relationship after relationship? So it's an infinite loop only if that's the loop that you keep doing. Remember, there are other things that you can do. You can offload the luggage, right? You can see a therapist, you can work with a coach. I think group coaching is a really good avenue for this kind of thing because it's like an opportunity for people to form relationships with each other that have very good, strict boundaries. So it's like a way to practice talking to each other, communicating your feelings. Like it's like how to make friends 101. Because in group, we don't let you be friends. So we're going to teach you all of these skills. And as you bring luggage into the relationship and you want to play games with someone, we're going to say, no, you're not allowed to do that. Instead of playing games with them because you feel connected, talk about how you want to play games with them. Vocalize your feelings. Understand what's going on the inside. Right? Bring all your luggage. By all means, toss it our way. We're ready to take it, but we're not going to give into it. We're not going to give you the relationship that you want to. What we're going to do is help you unburden yourself of the luggage. So I think group coaching is very good for this. So if you guys have this problem of being lonely and like driving people away and like having difficulty interacting with other human beings, group coaching is literally, it's like 12 weeks of training about like how to interact with other human beings, how to listen, how to be heard, how to vocalize your feelings, how to connect with other people, how to understand yourself, how to understand other people, how to step aside from your own biases and really listen to someone else. Okay. Can I be your friend? I hope so, but I don't know if that's going to be possible. Because one of the things that we try to do at Healthy Gamer is maintain good boundaries. So I like to be friends with people, but I think that if I'm friends with y'all, then that's your loss. Right? I think I bring more value to y'all by not being a friend and having a one-way relationship. So I'm here for your benefit. It doesn't have to be reciprocal. That's okay. Right? There are enough people like, I think in our community, we have a lot more people who form one-way relationships in an unhealthy way where they're the givers and there are people in your life where the other person is the taker. And so I think it's like you deserve someone to be a giver. And so it doesn't have to be reciprocal. Would I love to hang out though? Absolutely. I think it'd be great. Seriously, like think about it, right? So do I want to be friends? Sure, I love it. I love hanging out. So I tried to like a couple months ago, I showed up on the Discord and tried to hang out on the Discord. And it really screwed things up, man. Like it really screwed things up. Right? So it's like, that's okay. I have my friends. And I think rather than me being everyone's friend, I think a far better solution is for me to help y'all learn how to make friends. Then make your own friends and then we'll hang out. Cool. At some point, hopefully we'll have another retreat. I think that's like a good example of a nice, healthy, boundaried situation where you get to like shoot the shit with people. It was a lot of fun. We did one back in like 2019. It was great. Loved it. I love hanging out with people from Healthy Gamer. But it's important, right? So to understand that this is not a friendship because it can't really be a reciprocal. Right? And that's okay. Like, it's okay for things to not be a friendship. You can care about someone and not be their friend. You can support someone and not be their friend. Right? Because people like will sub and donate. Like, what does that mean for friendship? Like, that gets so complicated, right? That's not a friendship. Doesn't mean that I don't like you guys, but it's just complicated. So our relationship is what it is. And do I like to hang out with people? Sure. I think it'd be great to like retire and buy a cabin somewhere and like people can come by and visit whenever you feel like it. Like that'd be awesome. But we're just not there yet, chat. Yeah, dude. Hermit cabin cult? Sure. All right. Let's see. We got time for maybe one more. Okay, I'll give you guys a choice. We can do one more. We've got, how do I stay motivated for a new job after years of failure and not caring? Or is your passion or purpose the same thing? Or we can meditate. What do y'all want to do? Can we get a poll? Any mods around? Mods? Mods? Let me see if I can figure this out. Get Dr. K, figure out how to create a poll. Hey, Tech Teller, can you set up a poll? Oh, yeah. So there's 2 job subreddit posts. Okay, whatever. Okay, it seems like people want to do subreddit. Okay. All right. Let's do it. All right. Okay. Maybe we'll get to both. I really want to do both of these because they're such good posts. Hey, so for those of y'all that are like on the subreddit and stuff and posting stuff, I really love it. It's like really fantastic. So thank you all for doing that. Okay. How do I stay motivated for a new job after years of failure and not caring? It feels like my floundering and desperation has led me to a point where I cannot afford to fail again. I'm dirt poor, I have some addictions I should kick, and my loved ones worry about me. The last 3 years of my life has included repeated collegiate flunkage, various firings from crappy jobs, and a whole plethora of bullshittery on my end. Months of unemployment forced me to begrudgingly apply myself. I scored a job with a company that will pay me more than I've ever made in the past, with an opportunity for promotion and epic cash flow. A part of me is excited and relieved for this new opportunity. However, another side of me is saying, oh crap, oh God, what if I screw up again? It feels like this job is a precious baby otter, and I'm just a goblin with credit card debt. But my biggest fear is that my inner goblin will decide to stop caring about this otter, and I will once again exterminate my chance for success. So my question today is, how do I channel excitement for potential success into a long-term, hard-working attitude? I know that this problem I have won't be cured by an easy solution, but honestly, just writing it out feels good. Has anyone out there experienced this feeling? If so, what did you do about it? Any and all advice and comments would be greatly appreciated. I know, someone's saying, what colorful prose? My thoughts exactly. Someone's a gifted author. Okay, so this is a job post about someone who, has not been doing great in life, flunked out of college, maybe got addicted, people are worried about him, not doing great, and then sort of applied themselves and ended up getting a job with the option of epic cash flow, right? So now they're excited and they're afraid that they're going to screw it up. And their question is, how do I channel my excitement into like long-term motivation and drive? And the short answer is you don't. So long-term motivation and drive does not come from excitement. So this is something that's very important to understand. Long-term motivation and drive doesn't come from excitement. It comes from doing away with all of the negative stuff. So I want you guys to think about it this way. So imagine that you're starting a fire. And so you have some lighter fluid on there, right? Which is like that's the excitement. So excitement is by definition going to wane over time because it's emotions. We can't stay perpetually excited. And this is the major trap that a lot of people fall into, is when they get a spark of excitement, they work really hard, they feel excited, and then like something happens and their old patterns set in, and then their excitement wanes over time, and then things end up falling apart, right? So we see the cycle over and over again. A burst of motivation and excitement, followed by some progress, followed by back to square one. So how does that happen? People think that what I need to do is continue the excitement, and it sort of makes sense because excitement is what got you out of the rut. So you think, okay, like, how do I increase my excitement? How do I maintain it? How do I advance? Whereas what I'd say is that, excitement is like lighter fluid. So imagine you're starting, you're trying to start a fire and you place some logs or you put some lighter fluid and you kind of light it. But then the reason that your fire goes out is not because of an absence of lighter fluid. It's because there's like rain and there's like wind. And then you've got this tiny little fire and you don't know how to keep it going. Or you can keep it going for a few seconds or a few minutes. But it's really the negative aspects of your life weighing down on you that ultimately destroy your long-term motivation. So if we look at this person's post, we can even see it in their language, right? So let's just kind of take a look at, like, it feels like my floundering in desperation. I cannot afford to fail. Dirt poor, some addictions, various firings, plethora of bullshittery. Begrudgingly apply myself, yuck. Right? And I feel like I'm just going to screw it up again. Like, failure is inevitable. I'm afraid. I'm afraid I'm going to screw it up because I've screwed it up so many times in the past. So if you want real motivation, what you really have to do is nurture that fire, right? Like, you have to protect it from the negative stuff. So motivation, each and every human being is actually naturally motivated. If you look at it like, I know it sounds kind of weird, but it's not that we have to find motivation. It's that, like, what's learned is actually a lack of motivation. Being unmotivated is the modification. The default is actually to be motivated. And if you don't believe that, all you have to do is look at a child. Every child is motivated to walk. Every child is motivated to learn how to pick up a ball. Every child is motivated to, like, interact with other children. Right? As children, we see the most natural state of the human, which is to, like, strive to, like, grow and learn and do things. Like, you can't get kids to sit still. They get bored easily. They want excitement. They want to explore. They want to go do things. So the most natural element of a human being is actually to be motivated towards something. So what gets in the way? It's all the negative crap that kills the motivation. So long-term sustained motivation does not come from increasing your excitement, because excitement can absolutely get us out of the rut. Long-term motivation actually comes with processing the negative things that hold us back. Because what this person needs is not fuel for the fire. What they need is freedom from, like, the negative emotions. They need freedom from the doubt and freedom from the fear and freedom from the idea that inevitably I will screw this up as I have before. Because what's going to happen in this person's mind is very similar to our last case, which is when some natural thing happens that causes a negative impact in their performance, all of these negative thoughts will be like, oh, see, you're screwing it up again. You're screwing it up again. You're screwing it up again. There it goes. You knew you couldn't do it. You got uppity and you tried, and see what happened. You're doomed to failure. When the truth is that, there's going to be fluctuations in your job no matter what. So let's say they've got an opportunity for promotion and someone there happens to be, like, better at the job than they are. And then that person gets promoted. And so, like, even though next round that this person you may still get promoted, like, you just lost this one, you can apply next year or next 6 months or whatever, and you'll get promoted that time. But in those natural fluctuations, as your negative emotions start to leverage themselves in that space, then your motivation is going to become, go to crap. So the truth is that if people are asking, how do I maintain my excitement for the sake of, like, long-term motivation? Long-term motivation does not come from maintaining excitement. Excitement can help you out of the rut, but what you really need to work on is, why do you assume that the default position is going to be failure? Right? And there's good reasons to assume it. I'm not saying you shouldn't assume that that's the case because, you're a smart person and you've learned that I tend to screw things up. But by taking that possibility seriously, by looking at it seriously, by understanding, hey, like, I've screwed things up in the past and these are my vulnerabilities. By respecting those vulnerabilities, by taking them seriously, by taking the fact that you do screw things up pretty seriously and working on it very authentically, you can actually overcome them. Because even though you have screwed things up does not mean that you will continue to screw things up. Past performance is not a guarantor of future gains, right? This is a very important thing from, like, people who trade stocks. Just because a stock has done well for the last 100 days doesn't mean it will continue to do well for the future 100 days. Just because your life has led to certain conclusions which may be fair does not mean that those conclusions need to form your destiny. So the destiny is still in your hands. You need to just take your problems very seriously. You need to recognize that you have an awesome opportunity for epic cash flow. Is there a likelihood that you'll screw it up? Absolutely. And it's by respecting the possibility that you will screw it up that you actually give yourself the best chance of success. So I'm going to share with you guys a quick learning from TI. So I've worked with several esports teams, and there are some teams that, if you really want the best chance to win a game, the best chance to win a game is to accurately assess what your chances of winning the game are. So there are some teams that will be better than their opponents, and they'll think things like, oh, these people are crap. We got that. We got this, right? These people are trash. They play trash Dota. and we're gonna stomp them. And when you enter the game with that attitude, there's a decent chance, you have a greater chance of losing. The right attitude to have is that, hey, we are better than these people, but this is the international, and like, you know, anyone, they're going to be playing their best, and they're going to try to take games off of us, right? Even though if you're favored in a match, you still have to respect your opponent. Don't over-respect them, but respect them enough. I've seen the flip side of this too, where sometimes teams are intimidated by their opponent, and like they're not favored, right? So let's say you've got a 20% chance of winning this game. And so what these teams will do is will psych themselves up. They'll be like, oh, these guys aren't that great. Like, even though back of your mind, you know that they're probably better than you are. But people don't want to say that, right? Because they're afraid. I don't know what's going on with this color, by the way. But they don't want to say that. So what they do is they psych themselves up and they're like, oh, these people aren't that good. Like, we're better than they are. Like, you know, we can beat these noobs. Like, they're not that great. They're like, not that great. Oh, we can do this. And then what happens is when you enter the game and like you have an 80% chance of losing, like you start to lose. And then that false confidence comes crumbling down. So one of the key things I learned from TI is having authentic doubt is better than having false confidence. So if you really want to win that game against an opponent who's better than you are, you have to go in understanding that you're not favored to win. The attitude that you want is that, you know, I may not win, but I have a chance. So like, even though I'm not favored, like there is a way that I can win this game, and I just need to look for it. These people are not perfect. Are they better than I am? Sure. But they're not going to, their chances of winning are not 100%. I can win this game, even if they're better than I am. I just need to look for them to screw up. They're going to be playing with overconfidence, and I'm going to punish them for it. So to be very authentic about your situation. Have you failed in the past? Yes. Should you be careful about failing in the future? Absolutely. Respect your opponent. Take it seriously. And by doing so, you'll actually have the best chance of doing really well and actually coming out on top. So if you want to hit that epic cash flow, you can't underestimate your chances and you can't overestimate your chances. Take your problems seriously, respect them, and understand that if you respect your problems, they can actually be worked on and they're not invincible. You can overcome the things that have held you back, right? Your past does not dictate your future. You are in control of this. You just need to take it seriously. Yeah, hit the epic cash flow, dude. And report back if said Reddit user catches this. Yamp. Okay. All right, so we're going to do one more real quick, okay? This is going to be a short one, though. Okay. Dr. K, is your passion the same thing as your purpose? Hi, everyone. Lately, I feel like my life passion is psychology. Like, this is the one thing that I should pursue. I started thinking about pursuing it in middle school or high school, but then I thought it wasn't a good idea for a while. Now I'm thinking about it again, and I'm almost 25. Almost every day, I think about the psychological struggles that my friends or just people like coworkers have told me about, and I'm always applying things I learned from watching your videos, as well as other sources of information to them to try and figure them out. Sometimes I get lost in thought trying to solve people's mental struggles like puzzles, and when I do feel like I found an answer, I get excited. I get the feeling to tell the person right away because I think it may help them. I do not usually try to give advice, though, because I'm not properly trained to do so, and don't want to spread misinformation. I've wondered if I like feeding my own ego, but I really feel like I genuinely want to help people, especially with things that I manage to cope with pretty well, like anxiety. However, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure. But when I think of pursuing psychology, I think about how difficult it will probably be and feel like I'm just not in the position to pursue it. And it appears to be competitive. It seems like to really have a career in the field, I need to get a doctorate from an accredited school. It sounds like a lot. I'm barely able to take care of myself. I'm majoring in IT right now, and I'm struggling to balance it with my job, and I'm struggling to stay motivated to continue it. But I still feel like I have my own problems to fully overcome, such as social anxiety and past traumas, which I think has gotten better but needs much more work. I simply just do not feel like I'm ready to pursue it, but at the same time, I wonder if I'll ever be ready. And then I think, is this really what I'm meant to do? Or am I just making excuses? So, great post. So this is what I'll say, okay? The biggest handicap in life is waiting to be ready. So everyone wants to do things when they're ready. But the truth is that like readiness is like kind of a scam, and waiting to be ready is the most paralyzing thing that you will ever experience in life. So let's try to understand, what does it mean to be ready? So if we look at this post, what we see is this person is like, I'm 25 years old, so maybe some shame, they've fallen behind, things like that. I really care about psychology. I really care about helping people. Fantastic. But it's a lot of work. I don't know if I'm going to be ready. And I don't even know, like, if I even start the doctorate, will I finish it? Like, will it be good enough? Am I going to be capable? You see all of the excuses. So this is what I want you guys to see, okay? All positive. I found the answer. I get excited. I get feeling. I'm not properly trained. I don't want to spread information. I'm trying to help people. I like helping people. And then the doubts start to arise, right? So here's like a pretty honest, I don't know if I'm feeding my ego. And then, but, my passion in life is psychology. You know, I'm thinking about it again. Almost every day I think about it. Positive, 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 positive. But appears to be competitive. It sounds like a lot. I'm barely able. Majoring, struggling. I also have my own problems to fully overcome. You see that? I'm not going to be ready until I fully overcome my problems. I wonder if I'll ever be ready. Right? So this person is already starting with the idea that I have to be ready in order to do it. So readiness is the most paralyzing thing in life. Because what is readiness? We look at this post, and I encourage you guys to think about it. When I'm going to be ready to ask this person out. When? When I'm in shape. I'll be ready to go to the gym when I won't embarrass myself. I'll be ready to apply for the job when I know I'm going to get it. I'm going to be ready to apply for college when my GPA is good enough. I'm going to be ready to apply for college when I've written an awesome personal statement. So what is ready? What does that mean, to be ready? It means to be free of your doubts, right? Because if you do it before you're ready, what is the experience, what is the state of being before you're ready? Oh, it may not work. I don't know if it'll work. What if I can't do it? I have all my crap to overcome. It may not work. Uncertainty. What you're looking for is something to wipe it away. Readiness is like a cheat code in life, right? It's like a cheat that wipes away, it's this mythical thing that wipes away all of your anxieties and your uncertainty. Because when you're ready, you're, I'm ready. I'm confident. Let's do this. Let's go. Right? You don't want those all freaking anxieties and no, I may not be good enough. It's a lot of work. Like, I want to be free of all that crap. I want to just wipe it away. And once it's wiped away, then I will be ready. Once I fully overcome my traumas and anxiety, I've made a lot of progress, but I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I need to fully overcome it, right? I will only act when it's easy for me. My solution to success is to wipe away all of the negative things that I live with on a daily basis, and then I will go. I will go when I'm ready. And this is what holds us back in life, because you're never going to be ready. Won't happen. Right? Think about this. Just think about this for a second. How can you be ready for something before you do it? It's absurd. Right? Like think about becoming a parent. Like, no one's ready to become a parent. You don't know shit about being a parent before you become a parent. Like, it's absurd. Even having a second kid. Like, having one kid and having two kids is a completely different ballgame. Like, so here's the thing. When you have one kid, so thankfully I'm in an intact household, so I'm still married, right? So, like, you outnumber your child. So you think, like, okay, I'm going to be a decent parent because it's like me and my wife, and we're, like, tag teaming this, right? So, like, GG, kid. We got this. Then they get a second kid. You think you're ready because you've got a kid. I have a kid. They're 2 years old. I've succeeded in parenting. And then it's a whole different ballgame because you don't outnumber them anymore. It's an even game. It's like, oh my God, screwed. There's two of them, and they're both in diapers. GG. Like, I was not expecting this, right? I was not ready for a second kid. The truth is, in life, we're never ready for anything. It's an absurd concept. The only way I was winning the game of being a parent is when I had the odds stacked in my favor. I wasn't ready for the second kid. I never will be, and you gotta have one anyway. I mean, not y'all. It depends. You gotta be ready. But in reality, so this is the thing. Like, being ready is the most paralyzing idea in life. Because it's a continually... Being ready is the ultimate form of procrastination. It's like the highest level of procrastination. This idea of being ready. Because what is procrastination? Procrastination is nothing but not today. That's what procrastination is, right? And until you're ready, you have an endless supply of not todays. I'm not ready yet. I need to work on this. I need to work on this. I need to overcome this. I need to fully process my traumas before I apply for a doctorate in psychology. What? You don't need to fully process anything. You just need to get your ass up and apply. But what if I don't get in? What if it's a lot of work? What if this? What if that? What if this? What if that? Okay, yeah, sure. What if all of those things? What are you looking for? Certainty? Or are you like, it's not going to happen? So if you guys are waiting to be ready for something, stop waiting, because you'll never be ready. Right? On a more practical sense, sometimes you'll be ready. I mean, I think that there's, there's good reasons when people aren't ready. But for the most part, what I find is that being ready is just like, it's the biggest source, it's the strongest paralytic in life. It's the ultimate form of procrastination. So let it go. If you want to live your life, you can't live your life in a pain-free way. If you really want to make it worth living, it can't be pain-free. So to this person, I would say, apply for the doctorate. Who the hell cares? What if you aren't ready? You're just going to fail. So do it anyway. So you've got a choice. You can live your life. So for the last, you're 25 years old and you've been interested in psychology since middle school. So for 7 years of your life, you could have been doing psychology and you chose not to, or you weren't able to. So give yourself some forgiveness. Cut yourself a little bit of slack. And also recognize that you've got a choice. 7 years from now, you could have a doctorate, or you could be thinking about doing psychology. Right? And just apply. Work on it. Try. Give it a shot. And you say, oh, I'm not ready yet. So what? The consequence of not being ready is experience. That's what you get by not being ready. Could you fail? Sure. Could you get accepted? Sure. But then you're going to learn stuff. And so then what happens, I think it's good that like you're learning stuff from here, right? But it's very easy. It's easy to watch our videos and like learn something from it and like try to talk to your friends and give them advice, but then also try not to give them advice because you're not a trained professional. So go be a trained professional. If it's what you're interested in, if it's what you're passionate about, if it's what you've cared about since middle school, then go do it. And then you say, but this. Good. So then now you have your sequence of things that you have to take care of, right? So good job. You've done some of your work in processing your social anxiety. You've learned how to cope with anxiety. Like you're probably very good. But this, but that, but this, but that. So then ask yourself this question. What do you want your life to be? Are you ready to not be ready at life? Or do you need to fix everything first? Do you need to put all your ducks in a row? And recognize, dig into that. Look into like, why do you need your ducks in a row before you start doing something? You know, what's the consequence of your ducks not being in a row? And now we come back to it, failure, right? You want everything to be perfect. Because if you're perfect, then everything will work. And then you can have confidence that everything will work. Once you're certain, then you can have confidence. It's an interesting oxymoron, because confidence doesn't come from certainty. Confidence can't exist when there's certainty. If I'm playing SC2 and I use a map hack and some kind of bot to like do everything, I can be certain that I'm going to win. But I'm not going to be confident in my skill at StarCraft. You guys get that? Confidence doesn't come from certainty. It comes from uncertainty. It comes from acting in the face of uncertainty. It comes from surviving uncertainty. You're never going to be confident if you're ready. Confidence comes from acting when you're not ready, from giving it a shot and learning that, hey, even if I'm not ready, look at this. I'm able to succeed. And then you'll really be ready. Then it's going to be like GG game over and you're going to start living your life, the life that you deserve to live and the life that you owe yourself. So get your ass to actually like applying and doing the things that you do and don't wait until you're ready. Go. All right? Okay, so I don't know if I can lead a meditation now because we're running a little bit late, but I'm going to leave you guys with this as a meditation. So there are different kinds of meditation. I'm going to give you an inquisitive meditation because that's what I think we need to work on today. So I want you guys to think about this concept of readiness. There was another post that I saw that I thought was really good, which is how do I go outside? So like physically, I don't know where y'all live, but if you can go outside, I want you to leave your home today, if it's like physically safe, okay? And I want you to walk around your house, walk around for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Just walk outside. You don't have to talk to anyone or anything like that. Don't use headphones. Don't take your phone or any. I mean, take your phone for like safety reasons, but don't be on your phone. Don't listen to music. And I want you to think about what in life you are not ready for. And I want you to think about why can't you do what you are not ready for? What is it that's truly holding you back? And what does readiness mean to you? What are you waiting for? What does readiness look like? What does it mean to be ready? What are you hoping that readiness will take away from your situation? Right? Because readiness is taking something away. What is it taking away? That's your meditation for the day. Just think these thoughts and sit with them. And then if you're in a place where you can sit down outside, I want you to sit down outside at the end of the 15 or 20 minute walk. I want you to sit down with your spine straight and close your eyes. And I want you to just breathe. So whatever has come up for you, I want you to think about all of your uncertainty, and I want you to breathe in. Feel that cool air come in, and as you exhale, breathe out the uncertainty. Understand that in that moment, you will never be ready. You have a choice, though. Do you want to live a life where you're waiting to be ready? Do you want to live a life where you're going to stand on the sidelines? Do you want to live a life where you're observing a match, or do you actually want to get in and play the game? Because here's the thing, when you're on the sidelines of life, you can't win and you can't lose. It's a very safe place to be. Now, I understood this too. Another quick story. So I was the third stand-in for EG, right? It's one thing to be a sports performance psychologist for an esports team. You're invested, but I'm not actually playing the game. It's far more terrifying to realize that if 3 people get COVID and 2 teams had already gotten COVID, that I could be playing at TI. And people think that that's exciting. It's not exciting. It's fucking terrifying. It's the scariest thing in the world. Like one of the scariest moments of my life. So for each and every one of you, ask yourself, do I want to continue living life on the sidelines? Because the sidelines is safe. Or do you want to start playing the game? And understand that playing the game isn't pleasant. It's not what people crack it up to be. It's filled with pain and uncertainty and like whatever. So breathe into that and think about what you want to do with yourself. Because it's not about success. It's not about failure. It's about what you do, right? It's about how you play the game. Are you going to watch or are you going to play? That's the only question. It's not about winning or losing. And let go of all of those thoughts. Your mind will be, but this, but that, but you could do bad, but you could get kicked out, but my GPA isn't good enough. Who cares? If your GPA isn't good enough, it's not good enough. The question is, do you want your cognitively biased impression of whether your GPA is good enough or not to determine whether you actually act in life or not? I applied to medical school 120 times. And the only reason that I got in is because I applied 121 times. You guys get that? Like, you gotta play. Like, failure isn't that bad once you learn how to take it on, right? So go into it with eyes wide open. Go into it getting ready to get your ass kicked. And as you sit on that bench and you breathe into it, recognize, tell yourself, I'm ready to get my ass kicked. But fuck it, I'm not going to play on the sidelines anymore. And once you adopt that attitude, all the rest of this crap is going to melt away. It'll slough off like dead snakeskin. And then you'll be a healthy gamer. Okay. Who are we rating? Who's up dog? So for people who are saying I'm ready, I'm not sure if you're trolling me or not. Lyric? We can rate Lyric. We haven't rated Lyric in a while, right? I just want to make sure that they're live. All right. Okay, let's rate Lyric. Also, chat, I've been playing Metroid Dread. Dude, that game is lit. Oh my goodness. Dude, Metroid Dread is so good. Take care of yourselves, chat. And send Lyric some love.